Mike Ferguson of American Viewpoints also does yeoman's work up at one of our sister stations up in Columbia, 93.9 The Eagle. Mike joins us now on the big show. Mike, welcome back to the Morning Line.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here. So, Mike, the big debate is tonight. What do you hope to see? What do you think Donald Trump needs to do? Does Joe Biden need to show up at this one, or is he just continue just to run the clock out?
Well, if I were a Biden campaign person, I would try to run the clock out as much as I possibly could. What President Trump, I think, needs to do, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, but I think he needs to be quiet more. He did not give Joe Biden the chance to show that he's not capable of doing the job at the last debate, and I think he needs to hit hard with his time, and then let Joe Biden fall apart. I mean, Biden will not be able to go as long as Trump can, and hold things together. Probably one of the reasons they negotiated the 6 topics, 15 minutes each segment format. And then I would definitely, they're not making a big deal out of it now, but remember before the first debate, President Trump was talking about insisting that somebody who was neutral check Joe Biden for an earpiece. And then the Biden campaign's like, no, that's insulting. We're not even doing that or talking about it. Well, it looks like he may have had an earpiece in so somebody could feed him information and answers, and that was never proven, but the pictures were certainly incriminating on that. But if I were Donald Trump, I just would not try to talk over the top of Joe Biden at every opportunity. Let Joe Biden self-destruct.
Mike, does the president, we can safely presume that the moderators are likely not going to bring up the big bombshell story, which has been occupying all of us for the last week, of the Hunter Biden email story. We had another bombshell this morning just dropped by John Roberts about an hour ago. It seems that that's where the collusion might be, if there ever has been collusion over the last 4 years, and it's what the Bidens have been doing across the international spectrum with some of our most hated and feared enemies, the nuclear superpower of China. Iran. There's issues in Burisma. Mike, does the president bring this issue up? Does he need to? Does he have to tonight?
Yeah, I think so too. I think he does. I think you pointed out, because even even the most partisan Democrats probably at this point have to acknowledge, man, the media is really on our side on this one. I think he does. I think he needs to point out the obvious. Now, I wouldn't get into a knockdown, drag out with the moderator tonight, but I think he should take some shots throughout the debate and remind people of the bias in the information that people are getting, and the suppression of the stories that incriminate the Biden family. And short answer is I think he should bring that up, and I don't think he should make that the one thing that's front and center. I think that President Trump can win the debate on the issues, but I think he does need to remind people about even though tonight's moderator's connection to the some deep Democratic Party ties as well. So, I would if I were him.
And, Mike, doesn't he need to keep the focus on Joe Biden? I mean, Hunter Biden is an incredibly tragic disaster of a human being, and I don't know how much he wants to punch him down, but the focus should be on Joe Biden, right? Joe Biden is the, quote, the big guy, right? He's the reason all the corruption has occurred. So the focus has to be on Joe Biden and not Hunter, don't you think?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, and just knowing what the president tends to do, he probably will try to stomp on Hunter Biden a lot, and I think that'll be a mistake if he does. But, he should frame all of that in connection to Joe Biden abusing his office as Vice President of the United States, essentially being willing to sell access. You got to be really careful, especially when you get into someone like his son who's dealt with, drug abuse and drug addiction, because be careful when you're beating somebody up for some kind of addiction issue. That doesn't always come across really well, because there's a lot of people out there who struggle with that sort of thing, or know somebody who does. But make the connection that Joe Biden, appears to have been willing to sell access to the White House while he was vice president, and that's huge.
speaking to Mike Ferguson, the host of American Viewpoints with Mike Ferguson at AVP Radio Show on Twitter. Mike, you gave me a little tease about some of the things you have coming up on American Viewpoints this weekend, and one of those has to do with this story. So not only do we have the mainstream liberal media trying to put their finger on the pulse of the story and basically try and squash this story, but the social media monsters got involved, and they did things like block Twitter feeds and take Twitter feeds down. The most famous one being Kayleigh McEnany, the White House press secretary. Mike, you have a guest on this weekend, Scott Blackburn of the Institute for Free Speech, and you're going to talk about the social media censorship. Mike, you and I every time we turn on our microphones, we're subject to oversight, right, by the FCC and other governmental watchdogs. But on the other hand, you and I know, are big free marketeers. We tend to be a lot more libertarian on issues of free speech. But what do we do as conservative libertarians with this issue of social media and what they've done over the last week with the censorship of this big news story that has tried to come out before the American people?
Yeah, and you're talking about the Hunter Biden story that connected Joe Biden to all this from the New York Post it's been about a week now. And Facebook and Twitter just flat out suppressed the story. And Twitter has backed down and said, okay, we shouldn't have done that a little bit. This is where I'm going to part ways with some of the current conservative Republicans on this who want to talk about breaking up Facebook, breaking up Twitter, dragging them in front of the Senate and having hearings on censorship and fines and things like that. And that's the free market in me, because we do have emerging competition for Twitter in Parler. And so I think there still is a market. And what Scott Blackburn is essentially arguing in this interview from the Institute for Free Speech is that he's skeptical of the government coming in and micromanaging social media, saying, okay, we're going to protect free speech by making sure that we've got, restrictions and we've got regulations on media companies and platforms. Now, one of the points that they do make interestingly, though, is remember Facebook and Twitter, as part of their big lobbying effort, they were making the case that, we're not publishers, we're not editors, we're just platforms, so you can't come after us for what's said on Facebook or Twitter, which is okay, but they're clearly now making editorial decisions, which is why Twitter kind of went, oops, yeah, we better back off on that. And his argument's going to be that we should look at the market solution for this, and we should be leery of the government coming in, especially the federal government coming in and saying, we're going to regulate you into doing the right thing, because right now the Senate is in the control of Republicans, and you could argue mostly conservative Republicans, but at some point it's going to be in control of the other side, and be careful what kind of power you want to give to the federal government. And there are things we can do as, customers and consumers to either fight back or threaten to take our content and our advertising dollars somewhere else. And that's really where a lot of that discussion goes.
Hey, Mike, one more item I want to talk to you about. You've got a great guest on. I'm a big fan of hers, and Speaker Har may want to weigh in on this as well. She's one of the leaders in the educational reform school choice movement, Virginia Walden Ford, namesake of the movie Miss Virginia. And Mike, there have been so many great films about so many uplifting stories about school choice and parents being able to get their kids out of the horrible zip code in which they might be stuck with no educational options or horrible educational options. Movies like The Cartel and Heal Our Schools and The Lottery, and now this movie, Miss Virginia. And I know there's movies that come out, documentaries that come out about this every year. School choice is near and dear to me. I know it's near and dear to Speaker Har, and we've had such a tough time in Missouri in moving this issue forward. But Mike, it really is the civil rights battle of the 21st century, isn't it, for so many of these parents in these underperforming and non-performing schools in inner urban America?
Oh, absolutely. And not only that, it's also, you could argue, the same situation in rural America. And as you know, in Missouri, it's less of a Republican versus Democrat issue. It's more of an urban versus rural type of, and suburban versus rural kind of district as well, because you go into St. Louis and Kansas City, and those state reps and state senators in those districts mostly are the Democrats are saying, yeah, we get it. We support school choice in their communities, but you get out to some of the rural communities, And that's where the school boards and the teachers unions and a lot of those are the fierce opposition to any sort of competition for schools. And Miss Virginia, that film came out not quite a year ago, and it told Virginia Waldenford's story. Her son, they lived in Washington, D.C., in an awful school. He's getting beat up. There's teachers who aren't even pretending to care about education. She was told, just give up. Your kid's not going to do anything anyway in life. I mean, look where he's coming from. And, she led the fight to get that school choice program. And at one point they were arrested for, protesting and asking for the ability to get their children out of that school and into a better school. And it was made into a really inspirational movie. It was really one of the better ones out there. And so when I had the chance to get her on the program, it was a great conversation that we had. And I tell you, Tim, when you listen to Virginia Walden Ford, I texted my wife and I said, my grandparents are all gone by now. I wonder if she'd be willing to adopt me as her grandchild. I just want to go to her house for holidays. I mean, and she makes it really clear. She says, this is not about just kids in the urban core. She goes, this opened my eyes. I want this for every child in America, not just an urban situation, not just a black or white situation. She says this is just crucial for every child in America to be able to access a good education. So I really particularly enjoyed that interview, and I really look forward to everybody hearing it.
Yeah, Elijah, this is an issue that breaches the ideological divide, right? And it really would be it's one where Democrats and Republicans can come together, have come together, and it would benefit the entire state, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. It's one of those issues that Barack Obama always trumpeted that sort of put him on the right, was school choice. He never really made strides on it. But, yeah, especially, and I think now there's sort of a real opportunity to make progress on that when you see all of these school districts in rural Missouri and a lot of them in urban Missouri that are refusing to open. And so you've got parents that have to quit their jobs, stay home so their kids can try to do virtual schooling. Some of the things that other states have done that I think is really awesome is you look at like Oklahoma. They've taken some of their CARES money and they've sent it to parents. They but they sent it to parents that have had to figure out how to take off work, educate their kids at home, give them the opportunity to find schools that are meeting in person. It's something that Missouri should definitely look at. We've sort of considered it for this upcoming budget special session. Is there a way that we could add some of that or appropriate some of that CARES money to reimburse these parents that are in school districts that just refuse to meet in person? I know up in the St. Louis suburban areas, there's still public schools that have not yet opened their doors. And now in Montgomery County, they're talking about not opening the doors till fall of 21. And so for parents in those districts, especially two working parents or a single parent, how do you educate your children when you need to also put food on the table at the same time?
Oh, such devastating. Yeah, absolutely. There's some breaking news there from Speaker Har about what they might look at in the special session. Mike, as we roll to the break here, what else you got coming up on American Viewpoints this weekend?
Okay, so we're going to talk COVID vaccines. We've got from the Competitive Enterprise Institute, Joel Zimberg, one of their senior fellows, just did a research project and a report, an op-ed that you can see on their website, saying, okay, how do we determine if it's safe, and how do we focus on, once we know it's safe, getting people to be willing to get a vaccine, not forcing them through coercion, but taking that open free market approach to saying, okay, this is how we can help slow down the spread of COVID. And so we're getting some really kind of sticky questions on vaccines, safety, mandating them versus leaving the freedom to make that choice for ourselves. And so I'm actually going to be talking to him here in just a few minutes for that one. But the op-ed that he wrote, which is on their website, really, really interesting. And then we got to focus also on the show on holiday season. Don't forget the locally owned businesses in your community, especially after they've just been kicked in the teeth by government shutdowns and restrictions. Because remember, the big box stores, they've been deemed essential, and they've been allowed to keep doing business, and they've been doing great financially through the entire COVID pandemic. It's the local mom and pop shops that usually make your main street really cool and a lot of fun to go to that haven't been allowed to do their business. So we talk about the importance just economically of that in your community.
Everything American Viewpoints can be found at AVP Radio Show on Twitter. American Viewpoints with Mike Ferguson. Mike was our guest this morning. Mike, thanks so much for joining us again. Have a great week and weekend ahead, and we'll see you on the radio again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim. And hey, good to talk to you, Elijah.
Good to hear from you, Mike.